Shocking truth, my son texted, "Dinner's cancelled," but what happened next left me devastated. The night was supposed to be perfect. The smell of garlic bread filled the air, and the table was set for a family feast. Yet, all that anticipation shattered in an instant when my phone buzzed. I looked down, heart racing. It was my son, Jake. "Dinner's cancelled," his message read. Just those 3 words. The world spun around me. Something wasn't right. I could feel the dread knotting in my stomach. There was a heaviness in the air that shadows couldn't hold back. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted the clock ticking tick-tock, tick, each second stretching like a rubber band ready to snap. Jake was never one to cancel plans. A wave of anxiety washed over me. My pulse quickened, and there was a lump in my throat. Why wasn't he home yet? It was way past his usual time. I dialed his number, and my fingers trembled. It rang 1, 2, 3 times until it went to voicemail. Panic surged through me, gripping my chest like a vice. My mind raced with 1,000 possibilities. What if he was in trouble? What if he needed help? Just then, I heard a soft thud against the kitchen window. I glanced outside, where the shadows seemed to dance ominously in the dim light. The street was eerily quiet. No cars. No neighbors. Just the ominous sound of rustling leaves. Unease settled deep in my bones. The wind howled, as if echoing my fear. The air felt electric, charged with something I couldn't name. That I texted back, "Where are you? What is going on?" My heart sank as seconds turned to minutes. The silence felt deafening. I thought of the last time I hugged him, the last time I told him I loved him. And then my phone buzzed again. An incoming message. My breath hitched in my throat. Could this be the answer I'd been waiting for? I opened it, and the words on the screen struck me like a slap. "I can't come home. Dinner's the least of your worries." Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My mind reeled. What could be worse than this? I needed to know. I felt a chill as shadows crept closer to the window, and an unsettling thought flashed through my head. What was happening out there in the dark? What had Jake stumbled into that made dinner feel like a dream long gone? I raced to the door, heart pounding in my chest like a war drum, eager to confront the unknown. The night beckoned with a foreboding whisper. The chill in the air bit at my skin as I stepped outside, ready to face the secrets lurking in the shadows. What awaited me out there? The moment I stepped outside, the chill wrapped around me like a shroud. Every creak of the old porch sent shivers down my spine. I hesitated only for a heartbeat before plunging into the darkness, where the streetlights cast flickering halos, barely cutting through the inky night. "Jake!" I shouted, panic lacing my voice. No answer. Just the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. I felt small and helpless, like a child lost in a crowd. What could he have gotten involved in? The urgency was overwhelming. I needed to find him. With each step down my driveway, I could hear my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The world felt distorted, the shadows seemed to stretch and twist as I moved. I gripped my phone tightly, fighting against the mounting fear clawing at my insides. Each soft beep from my device felt like a harbinger of bad news. Nothing prepared me for what I saw as I rounded the corner onto Elm Street. A cluster of police vehicles lit up the night, red and blue flashing against the gloom. My chest tightened. It felt like a brick dropped into the pit of my stomach. I raced towards the scene, the dread pressing heavily on my chest. As I drew closer, I could hear voices frantic and urgent. A police officer stood at the edge of crime scene tape, speaking into his radio, eyes darting to the growing crowd that had begun to gather. whispering, pointing. My heart dropped. What if? I mustered the courage to approach the officer, my voice trembling. What happened? Is my son, ma'am, please back away. The officer's tone was firm, but his eyes softened with concern. I could see the hint of a frown forming as he glimpsed my desperation. Jake. I need to find my son. My throat felt raw, and I fought against the tears threatening to spill. Step aside, ma'am, another officer said, his expression hardening. We are investigating an incident. You'll need to keep clear. The word incident pierced me like a knife, slicing through my fragile composure. My instincts screamed at me, a warning I couldn't ignore. I scanned the faces in the crowd, searching for a sign, something, anything that might lead me to my boy. Suddenly, a familiar sound echoed through the chaos. A sharp whistle cut through the air, unmistakable. Jake's whistle. My heart raced as I spun around. It came from further down the street, just beyond the commotion. Jake! I shouted again, breaking free from the crowd. Each step felt heavier than the last, anticipation electrifying my senses. What was he doing? Why was he whistling? I dashed toward the sound, eager to bridge the gap between us and the dark unknown. My breaths came in frantic gasps, urgency fueled by a mother's instinct to protect, and then, I saw him. There he was, standing beneath a flickering street lamp, his silhouette outlined against the dim light. But he wasn't he alone, an unfamiliar figure loomed beside him, shrouded in shadow. Jake! Don't move! I yelled, desperation flooding my voice. His gaze met mine, confusion marring his features. Mom, it's okay. But the figure beside him took a step forward, and my heart dropped. I had only a moment to react. Who was this person? What was going on? Suddenly, the ground felt unsteady beneath my feet as I sensed the danger closing in. The streetlights flickered ominously, and I felt an unsettling truth creeping in, that nothing would ever be the same again. What had my son gotten himself into? The figure beside Jake stepped into the light, and every instinct in my body screamed to run. It was a man, tall and lean with a face partially obscured by a hood. His eyes glinted with an unsettling mirth, like he was enjoying a private joke that no one else was privy to. I could feel the air grow thicker around me, the night wrapping itself around the scene like a tightening vice. Jake! Get away from him! I yelled, my voice cracking. Panic clawed at my throat as I watched him stand there, seemingly oblivious to the growing threat. It's cool, Mom, Jake said, raising his hands in a placating gesture. His nonchalance felt like a cruel joke in the face of the palpable danger. We were just talking. Talking? I echoed, disbelief painting my voice. Talking to who? What are you doing outside at this hour? The man's laughter cut through the tension, harsh and grating. Relax, lady. I'm just showing the kid something. I didn't like the way he smiled at Jake. There was something predatory in it. I felt every protective instinct I had igniting into a fiery rage. Jake's safety was all that mattered. I took a step forward, the dim light flickering above, casting long shadows that danced nervously between us. Jake, come here. Right now. But instead of moving towards me, he took a step closer to the man. My heart sank further. The man nodded slowly, and I realized he was reaching into his coat. A wave of dread washed over me. What was he pulling out? I braced myself, expecting the worst. Mom, chill. You're overreacting. Jake insisted again, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. I had to act quickly. Stay where you are. I shouted, adrenaline propelling me forward. Suddenly, the man produced something, a shiny object, a knife glinting under the street lamp's flicker. My breath hitched, and time seemed to stretch. My pulse thundered in my ears as I processed the scene. My son, a boy blissfully naive, entranced by this stranger who threatened him with steel. Jake! Get back! I screamed, my voice mingling with the heavy silence that enveloped the street. People had begun to notice, their heads turning, but nobody stepped forward. The shadows of indifference smothered them, leaving me alone to face this nightmare. The man took a step toward Jake, that wicked smile still plastered on his face. "Come on, kid. This'll be fun." "No. It won't." I yelled, feeling my world implode with fear. I lunged, but the moment my foot hit the pavement, he sneered and swung the knife, catching the light in a way that told me he was serious. "Mom, stop!" Jake shouted, his eyes wide, fear cutting through his bravado. In that instant, I saw a flicker of fear in Jake's eyes, fear that mirrored my own. It tore me apart, realizing he was in over his head, trapped in a web spun by this monster. My heart raced, fueling a surge of rage that eclipsed my fear. "Let him go!" I cried out, desperation transpiring into a primal scream as I helplessly watched the scene unfold. In that moment, everything blurred into urgency. I couldn't lose him, not like this. The man smirked, stepping even closer, savoring my agony like a fine wine. "Make me," he taunted, his voice dripping with menace. Jake looked back at me, and in that fleeting second, a new understanding flickered in his gaze, the realization that the world was not as safe as he once thought. But what could I do? What did this man want? Just then, the piercing wail of sirens broke through the still night, and the man's expression shifted from delight to anger. "Damn it," he hissed, shoving Jake aside. "Run!" I shouted. But was it too late? Jake hesitated. The moment felt stretched, and everything hinged on the precarious edge of choice. The figure vanished into the shadows, and I lunged forward, wrapping my arms around Jake just as sirens echoed off the buildings, lightning illuminating the chaos around us. What had just happened? Why had I let him talk to that man? All the questions surged forward like a tidal wave, drowning any rational thought. "Jake, are you all right?" I gasped, pulling away just enough to see his face, hoping to find solace in his eyes, but the fear remained. "I didn't know, Mom. I didn't know." I could barely breathe, and the night felt weightier than ever as the realization hit me. The danger was just beginning. This wasn't just a random encounter. Something darker was afoot. What was this man involved in? What had he shown Jake that made him so intrigued? And as the police swarmed in, I knew it wasn't over, not yet. There was more to uncover, and it was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Was I prepared for the truth that lay ahead? The blaring sirens wrapped around us, almost drowning out the chaos of my thoughts. I could feel Jake trembling as I tightened my grip. The flickering blue lights danced across his pale face, illuminating the fear etched in his features. I wanted to shield him from this world, a world that had suddenly turned hostile and dark. "Mom," Jake whispered, his voice barely breaking through the cacophony. "What was that guy talking about?" I couldn't answer. I was still trying to process the man's predatory smile, the way he had looked right through Jake, as if he knew something no one else did. My mind fought to piece together a logical explanation, but nothing felt remotely close to the truth. How had my Jake become embroiled in this? Policemen flooded the scene, their stern faces and authoritative shouts reminding me that this was no longer just a personal crisis. They began to question onlookers, and I could feel their focused eyes darting toward us. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" One of them barked, his voice carrying a tone meant to regain control. He was looking at me, though he was looking at Jake, assessing the situation, and I could almost sense an accusation in his scrutiny that I felt my pulse quicken. "He's fine," I snapped, but my protection instilled a vulnerability I hadn't known existed. "Fine? He was just threatened by some lunatic with a knife." Another officer snapped, stepping closer. I could feel the mounting pressure of the situation, and suddenly all the indignation I had felt morphed into panic. They had to take this seriously, they had to understand the depth of the danger still lurking just out of sight. "Ma'am, we need a statement," the first officer insisted, his eyes locked onto mine. But I couldn't focus on the words. Instead, everything shifted back to Jake. "Mom, I saw something in his hand," Jake stammered, his eyes shifting nervously. "Something he wanted to show me." "Enough," I said firmly, but his voice pulled me back, unraveling my tension. "What if he comes back?" What if Jake? My tone was sharper than I intended, but fear had a way of overriding my logic. You need to tell me everything. Right now. I watched the color drain from his face, the realization hitting him like a brick wall. I don't know, Mom. I thought he knew about me. I thought what? I pressed, desperation clawing at my throat. Could this nightmare get any worse? A part of me feared he might be caught in a web deeper than I knew. A secret, Jake whispered, barely audible over the chatter of voices now swirling around us. He said I was special, that he had something to show me. I felt sick. Why had Jake even entertained this man? The question struck me hard. Had I failed somehow? Had I overlooked a sign that had been flashing, begging for attention? Then, as if the universe was intent on taunting my anguish, a secondary siren screeched through the street, halting my thoughts. The sound was different, urgent. As if summoned by some unseen force, a black SUV pulled to the curb, windows tinted and dark. Two figures emerged, moving with a purpose that felt off-kilter, as if they had no intention of playing by the rules. Mom! Jake gasped, straightening. Who are they? I didn't have the answer. An unsettling chill ran down my spine as the men approached, their demeanor radiating power and danger. It was the way they exchanged knowing glances that set my heart racing. Forget the kid, one said, his voice low and menacing. We didn't come for him. A jolt of dread gripped me. What do you want? I asked, forcing strength into my shaky frame, though my inside screamed for me to flee. Just a chat with the boy, he replied, a smile creeping onto his lips that felt more sinister than reassuring. And oh, I would not let them take him, not now when I had just found him in the grip of danger. The fear pulsing inside me ignited into raw defiance. Get away from him! I shouted, stepping in front of Jake, wild determination surging through my veins, but I could feel the walls closing in, the net tightening as shadows of uncertainty began wrapping around my reality. What had my son discovered? And why did these men seem to be hunting him now? Before I could process my next move, I heard Jake's voice break through the madness, quivering with fear. Mom, what did I get us into? And just like that, I realized we may not have the luxury of time. I needed answers and fast, but the truth was slipping through my fingers like sand. What had we wandered into? The answer was waiting, and I was terrified of what it could reveal. The moment hung in the air, thick with tension and fear. The police officers, now drawn by our commotion, seemed like distant silhouettes, fading behind the looming threat of the two men before us. Their eyes glinted with a predatory gleam, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a game to them, a sick, twisted game in which Jake was merely a pawn. Listen to me, I said, my voice steady but laced with an urgency that pulsed in my veins. You're not taking him anywhere. I don't care who you are. One of the men chuckled darkly, the sound sending a shiver down my spine. You think you can stop us? He taunted, stepping closer, invading my space like a storm cloud. We have plans for your boy. What he knows is far more valuable than you imagine. Jake was trembling beside me, his small frame quaking as I held him tight. Mom, I don't want to know what they want, he murmured, terror painting his features. I didn't mean to get involved. I wanted to comfort him, to promise that everything would be all right. But deep down, an uncomfortable truth settled in. He was already too deep. The earlier hints, the secret the stranger had mentioned, I had to understand what this all meant. What was my son caught up in? Let us simplify this, the second man interrupted smoothly, his expression shifting into a mask of insincere affability. You cooperate, and it'll go easier on you. Refuse, and he let the threat linger like a noxious fog between us. Before I could think of a retort, the first officer stepped in, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Back off. What are you two doing here? He positioned himself between me and the men, his body tense, every muscle primed for a fight. Just looking for a lost child, one of the men replied without missing a beat. But his eyes betrayed him, dark shadows hovering beneath the surface, revealing a deeper intent. Lost child? The officer snapped, skepticism dripping from his tone. The crowd murmured around us, eyes wide with intrigue and anxiety. I could sense their judgment. This situation was spiraling out of control, and we were caught in the center of it. Suddenly, a commotion erupted in the distance. More police vehicles rolled into the scene, sending a wave of apprehension through the gathered crowd. The steady stream of officers surged forward, the urgency palpable as they began to cordon off the area. I grasped Jake's hand tighter, sensing his fear mirroring my own. "Mom." Jake's voice cracked. "What now?" As the officers tried to assert their authority, one of the men raised his hand dismissively. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." And just like that, the world tilted. In a flash, one of the men lunged, swift and precise. I barely processed the movement before a shout pierced the chaos. An officer had tackled him, but the other slipped past, heading straight for Jake. "Jake!" I screamed, adrenaline flooding my senses as I surged forward. In a heartbeat, I was between them, my body a shield. I pushed Jake back, but panic rushed through me, my instincts screaming for me to protect him at all costs. "Mom!" he cried, reaching for me. The man, held momentarily back by the shouts of the officers, leered at him, a malevolent grin boring into my soul. "This isn't over, kid," he sneered, before wrenching himself away and diving into the crowd. My heart raced as I turned to scan the chaos. Where had he gone? Where were the others? The police were distracted, still grappling with the man they had restrained. "Mom, I'm scared." Jake's voice quivered, and my resolve deepened in that moment. "I know, sweetheart. Just stay behind me," I urged, my own heart pounding in time with his. As I pulled him closer, dread washed over me. Had this just been the tip of the iceberg? Who were those men? It became clear that whatever secret Jake had stumbled into was about to explode, and we were right in the middle of its path. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. This was over. The darkest shadows were yet to come, and they would stop at nothing to get to my son, but lurking beneath this urgent need for safety was a growing realization, a puzzle piece that refused to fit into my understanding. What had Jake found out? And why was it worth all this chaos? My eyes darted nervously through the crowd as I whispered to Jake, "We have to leave now." In that moment, as I turned away from the unfolding drama, it hit me an impending storm was brewing. What had we unleashed? And were we already too late to stop it? I pushed through the chaos, clutching Jake's hand like it was a lifeline. I could feel the tide of urgency sweeping over us, people moving around in a frenzy, some shouting, others recording the scene. My heart raced, each beat a reminder of the danger creeping closer. "Mom!" Jake whimpered, his voice a fragile whisper beneath the storm of noise. His fingers trembled in mine. I could see the fear etched into his innocent face, and it struck me like a punch to the gut. My son didn't deserve this. "We'll find a way out," I promised, though I wasn't entirely sure how. We needed to disappear from this madness. I needed to get him to safety. Just as we edged toward the perimeter, another officer appeared, waving his flashlight like a beacon. "Over here. This way," he barked. I hesitated, eyes darting back toward the scuffle, where the officers were still wrestling with the man who had tried to reach Jake. But I couldn't afford to lose any more time. "Go," I urged Jake, and we ran toward the officer. As we zigzagged through the panic-stricken crowd, a trajectory of fear and adrenaline coursed through me, driving us forward like a whirlwind. We reached the officer, who quickly ushered us behind the line of police vehicles. The darkness enveloped us a bit, but the nervous energy of the chaos kept me on high alert. "Stay right here," the officer instructed, glancing over his shoulder to assess the unfolding confrontation. I nodded but couldn't shake the rising sense of dread. "What about the other guy?" I asked, my voice just above a whisper. "He went after Jake with a firm gaze fixed on the continuing struggle," the officer replied, "We'll handle it. Just stay put." There was reassurance in his words, but I could feel danger simmering just out of sight, like a storm waiting to break. Jake huddled close, his body pressed against mine. I wanted nothing more than to shield him from everything happening around us. "I'm sorry for getting caught up in this," he murmured, voice thick with regret. I didn't mean to shoo, I whispered, bending down to meet his gaze. It's not your fault. We'll figure this out, I promise. But as I locked eyes with him, a nagging thought clung to my mind. What had Jake discovered? What had entangled him in a web of threats and shadows? Suddenly, I felt a movement brush past, and my heart lurched. My instincts kicked in as adrenaline surged through my veins. I turned just in time to see a figure slipping through the crumbling crowd, a flash of black. That was him. The second man was still here. Jake, we need to go now. Stay close. I shouted, yanking him with me as we darted back into the throng. My heart pounded, each beat a drum urging me to move faster. We had to slip away before he found us. Where? Jake cried, panic creeping back into his voice. Anywhere but here. Come on. I urged, weaving through the startled faces all around us. We broke free from the tangling crowd and dashed towards an alley, the sounds of chaos fading into the background. My lungs burned as we reached the darkened space. I leaned against a brick wall, taking a moment to catch my breath. Mom, what do we do now? Jake asked, his voice shaking, small and lost in the echoing silence of the passage. My chest constricted as fear clawed at my throat. We wait, I breathed, and we listen. But only a moment passed before a horrified shriek echoed from the main street, pulling our attention back to the unfolding nightmare. My pulse quickened. Who had screamed? What was happening? I peeked out just as shadows swarmed, and the faintest shimmer of metal glinted in the dim light. Someone was hurt. The chilling sense of inevitability washed over me. More than a secret had been uncovered tonight. I still didn't know the full truth, but it was coming rushing towards us like a freight train, and then came the realization this wasn't just about us anymore. We were caught in something much larger than I ever anticipated. Jake, I whispered, dread entwined with hope, we might have to confront this head-on. I turned to him, feeling a mix of fear and determination flood my veins. Could we really face whatever storm was approaching? But with every heartbeat, I could sense the shadows closing in. What had I just brought us into, and would we survive the chilling darkness threatening to consume us? The shriek still reverberated in my ears, pulling me farther into a reality I didn't want to confront. What had stirred that panic? I peeked around the edge of the alley, heart racing with every quickening pulse. Voices boomed in the distance, commands and cries intermingled in a horrifying cacophony. A figure stumbled into view, silhouetted against the glare of flashing lights, a woman, disheveled and grasping her arm as if she were fighting pain. Blood smeared across her sleeve. I stepped back, a gasp escaping my lips. Mom, is she okay? Jake's small voice broke the tension, but I couldn't tear my eyes from the scene unfolding beyond the alley. I am not sure, I murmured, feeling helpless. The tremors in my hands were like electric shocks, igniting my instincts to run yet holding me in place. Another officer pushed past the spectators, urgency woven into his frantic gestures. Clear the area. We need assistance here. He shouted, scrambling through the crowd with fierce determination that I drew back from the edge of the alley, instinctively pulling Jake closer. The buzzing threat loomed large. Whatever had just occurred outside was nowhere near over. How do we get out of here? Jake pleaded, his voice small. I could feel his fear radiating off him in waves. The uncertainty gnawed at my gut. Could I reassure him while I felt so lost myself? Shoo, just stay quiet for now, I replied, trying to keep my voice calm, though inside, I was screaming. The air thick with tension made it hard to breathe. We couldn't stay here. Suddenly, Jake tugged on my sleeve. Look. His wide eyes were fixed on something in the distance. I turned, following his gaze, and my heart dropped. The other man, the shadow from earlier, was back in view, lurking just outside the alley's mouth. He paused, scanning the crowd like a predator. I didn't want to believe it, but his eyes were locked on us. Jake, I barely managed to whisper, fear twisting my stomach into knots. We need to move now. I grabbed his hand and we darted further down the alley, heartbeats pounding like drums. My thoughts raced faster than my feet. Where could we find safety? What strength did I have left to protect my child? The alley was dim, a narrow passage lined with darkened doorways. I paused to catch my breath, the weight of the situation crashing into me like the tide. What if he finds us? Jake asked, his voice thick with worry. Then we fight back, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. We want to let him take you. Just then, a deafening crash broke through the night. A nearby dumpster toppled over, metal clanging against concrete, and a group of figures surged toward us, silhouetted in the glow of the streetlights. They shouted, their voices filled with anger and chaos, their faces blurred by the shadows. Mom! Jake cried out, panic edging in again. Stick with me. I commanded, pulling him close as we bolted deeper into the alley, each step echoing the horror unraveling around us. That moment, I felt the air change, a surge of something dark, almost electric, crackling through the alley. I stumbled upon a door tucked away at the end. Come on. I yanked at the handle, praying it would open, but it didn't budge. With every ounce of strength, I pushed. Still nothing. Behind us, I heard footsteps getting closer. The shadows thickened, the dread palpable. Jake, we need to get in. I urged, desperately trying again, but the door remained locked. Mom, please. His trembling voice pushed me to my limits. My mind flashed with chaotic images, memories intertwining the fear, the danger, what had brought us here. I had to find a way. I'd fight with everything I had. Then, a sudden realization struck me. Could one last attempt really lead to salvation? Or would it seal our fate for good? As the footsteps approached, I slammed my shoulder against the door, frustration and fear mingling into a singular desperate hope. The door groaned, and slowly, creaked open a fraction. Just enough for a glimmer of light to spill out. Jake, inside. But before we could make a move, a shadow loomed behind us, dark and ominous. Going somewhere? I froze, turning slowly, the weight of our next move crashing down over us all over again. What would happen now, and who would emerge from the darkness waiting outside? The man stepped closer, his features sharpening in the light that spilled from the barely opened door. Dark hair, a stubbled jaw, but it was the intensity of his gaze that paralyzed me. Who are you? I pushed the quiver from my voice, though dread curled tightly in my chest. Just someone curious about what you're doing here. His lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Every instinct screamed for me to shield Jake. I tightened my grip on his little hand, feeling his fear pulse into me like a heartbeat. We don't want any trouble, I said, hoping to defuse the rising tension. But he only chuckled, a chilling sound that echoed off the alley walls. Trouble? You've already found it. He took a step closer, the shadows swallowing him whole. And now, you're about to dive in head first. Panic surged as I glanced back at the door. It felt like a fragile barrier between us and the chaos outside. Jake, we need to go, right now, I urged, inching toward the door and shoving it with my shoulder. It cracked open wide enough for us to squeeze through. The man lunged, but I was quicker, pushing Jake through first. I followed closely, eyes darting to the street beyond. We were nearly free, but the sounds of chaos threatened to swallow us whole. In those precious seconds, everything seemed to slow. I could hear muffled screams reverberating from somewhere in the distance. Mom! Jake's voice broke through the murky fog of panic. What's happening? I couldn't answer. Instead, I bolted ahead, dragging Jake along, eyes scanning for any sign of safety. The street was packed with curious onlookers, their faces a mix of shock and horror, each one a reflection of my own spiraling fear. Hey! Someone shouted from behind us. The man had followed. Anger laced his voice, demanding attention. Run! I yelled, urging Jake forward as I started to sprint. We darted through people, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm in my chest. I could feel the man's presence behind us. Could I protect my son from this menace? Suddenly, I felt a tug at my shoulder. Mom, wait! Jake's breath came in fast, scared bursts. What? I spun to face him, urging him to keep moving. I left my backpack. He gasped, pointing back toward the alley. Forget it. We can get you a new one. I insisted, but inside I felt a sinking dread. That backpack wasn't just a bag, it held his favorite things, his comfort. No, Mom, please. He pleaded, eyes wide and pleading like I had never seen before. We were cornered, the decision hung like a weight between us. Did I risk everything for a bag? My heart raced, temptation bubbling within me. But the repercussions could be dire. Okay, stay close, I relented, dragging him back toward the alley. Each step felt heavier, my senses hyper-aware of every shuffle and whisper. The man was still trailing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't going to let this end easily. As we neared the spot where we had fled, a new noise erupted, shouts electrifying the air, fires crackling to life in a distance we could no longer ignore. My mind raced. What was happening beyond the sidewalk? I can't see my backpack. Jake cried out, desperation lacing his words. Jake, I grabbed his shoulders, my heart breaking for his worry mingling with mine. We have to go, your safety is more important. A crash echoed from deeper in the alley, rattling the air around us. Shadows stretched and morphed, a sense of impending doom crashing over us like a wave. Mom, please. Jake whimpered. Just then, the man's shadow appeared behind us, lurking closer, a hunter circling his prey. How sweet, he sneered. But I think it's too late. I turned, fury flooding through me. It wouldn't end like this. With a fire deep in my soul, I could either run or fight. There was just one question reverberating in my mind: would I risk everything to confront this monster for my son? The air crackled, the darkness closing in, deeper than I feared. In that single moment, whatever choice I made would seal our fate. Jake, follow my lead, I whispered, feeling the weight of every decision pressing down like an iron shackle. But I had to act. What would happen next? Would we find the courage to face him, or would we become just another pair of shadows lost in the night? Fear surged through me as I turned to face the man, my heart pounding in my chest. Shadows danced around us, but all I could see was his smirk, a twisted reflection of menace in the dim light. You're not scaring anyone, I shot back, my voice steadying despite the terror clawing at my insides. You need to leave us alone. He stepped forward, a thick air of arrogance surrounding him. You're mistaken, love. I'm just getting started. His eyes gleamed, and with every heartbeat, the weight of his presence grew heavier. Mom, Jake's whisper rang in my ears as his small hand gripped mine tighter, his entire body trembling. Silencing the rising panic inside me was nearly impossible, but I had to plant my feet firmly in the ground. Stay behind me, Jake. Whatever happens, I won't let him hurt you, I promised, my voice low and fierce. Is that so? He took another step closer, and suddenly, the chaos around us intensified. A loud crash echoed from the street, followed by shouted orders. Do you really think you can protect him? It was chilling how the man reveled in the uncertainty, his laughter mingling with the distant cries. I could see it now. A crowd had gathered, and the fear was palpable, each person witnessing our impending doom. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed people slipping away, fleeing from whatever turmoil surrounded us. Desperate pleas for police assistance rang out in the air. But it was too late for them, they wouldn't be able to save us. Just grab the bag. I hissed at Jake once again, my words laced with urgency. If the backpack was his safety blanket, then it was my only connection to keeping him grounded. Mom, please. I need it. He teetered on the edge of panic, his wide eyes darting between the man and the shadows that pressed in on us. Every moment stretched like an eternity. Adrenaline spiked through me, my grip on Jake tightening as I pushed forward into the alley. It felt claustrophobic, walls closing in, the chaos seeping into our reality, smothering us. Don't you dare turn your back on me. The man yelled, fury seeping into his tone. I risked a glance back at him. He was advancing, his movements sharp and predatory. I felt like prey, cornered and terrified. Now! I barked at Jake, slinging his little frame toward the alley's shadowy corner where I spotted the backpack just a few feet away. Jake rushed forward, hesitating for only a moment before diving for it. As he grabbed the bag, I could see a flicker of hope in his eyes, a promise of safety that felt far too distant. "I got it, Mom. I got it," he shouted, but the victory faded as dread washed over me. The man charged, but I was ready now, adrenaline sharpening my senses. "Jake, run!" I yelled, shoving him toward the mouth of the alley. I turned to face our pursuer. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, yet I stood my ground. "Think this is a game?" The man's smile twisted into something ugly. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." I had a flash of thought, who was he? And why was he so hell-bent on tormenting us? But there was no time. I had to protect my son. "Get behind me!" I yelled, forcing my body to block Jake. My heart raced, reality narrowing down to this one critical moment. The shadows thickened as the man drew even closer, murder in his eyes, our breaths mingled with the air buzzing with chaos, the environment closing in with every heartbeat. A crack, a rumble from somewhere in the distance stirred a new kind of fear. An explosion? This wasn't just an attack on us. Something was much worse at hand. The man leaned in closer, sneering. "Your night just got a lot more interesting," and then, without warning, he lunged at I. That instant, the world shattered around us. I had to act quickly, but the path was unclear. Would I fight, or was it time to run? But one thing was for sure, the hunt had only just begun. What other horrors lay behind that twisted smile? Would we survive long enough to uncover the truth? Heart pounding, I shifted my weight, preparing to defend Jake, but terror blurred my vision. The man's face was a mask of malevolence, his movements quick and predatory. My instincts screamed to flee, yet my body was rooted in place, fueled by the burning need to protect my son. "Jake, listen to me," I said urgently, as every nerve in my body shot adrenaline. "You need to get moving. Now." I felt sweat bead on my forehead, and it took every ounce of strength to keep my voice steady, my heart racing in sync with the chaos around us. "I want to leave you," he yelled back, his small frame trembling, fear screaming in his wide eyes. The connection we shared held me steady, though it weighed heavily knowing he was right. I couldn't abandon him. The man advanced, a wicked glint in his eye, and laughter slipped from his lips, an unsettling sound laced with danger. "Oh, but you will," he taunted, lurching forward, taking the space between us in long strides. "You have no choice." With a surge of courage, I thrust Jake behind me. "You'll have to get through me first," I shouted, the words bursting from my chest in a primal defense. My heart was a roaring engine, pounding in my ears. The man halted, a flicker of surprise crossing his features, then it twisted into a cold smirk. "Such bravery," he mocked. "But it won't save you." Just then, a cacophony of police sirens erupted, invading the air like a shockwave. Flashing lights danced behind him, piercing through the thickening dark. The man's smirk faltered, and I seized the moment. "Jake, run. Now." Fear mixed with urgency propelling us forward. We dashed into the fray of confused bystanders and chaos. My heart raced as I guided Jake, pulling him away from danger. "Mom, he's coming," Jake shouted, glancing back. The panic in his voice was palpable, igniting a surge of wild terror within me. But I couldn't look back. I focused on the crowd, trying to spot a way out. The headlights from the police vehicles illuminated familiar faces, the warmth of neighbors and friends drifting alongside the cold current of fear. I felt a connection to everyone around me, united in horror. "Over here," a voice called out. It was a familiar officer from our neighborhood. I steered Jake toward him, desperation fueling our speed. "Get inside." We rushed into the nearest building, my pulse still hammering as I pulled the door closed behind us. The environment shifted from chaos to an echoing sanctuary, voices filtering through the walls. While the adrenaline still coursed through my veins, instant relief flooded my senses at least for a moment. Inside, anxious eyes turned toward us. Officers were stationed, phones buzzing as they relayed information. The air felt charged, thick with uncertainty. "Are you okay?" the officer asked, scanning us for injuries. "Just scared," I replied, pulling Jake close, still trembling. "Please," he was right behind us. Panic surged again, and as if sensing my distress, Jake nestled closer, clinging to me like a lifeline. "Stay here," the officer instructed, his gaze settling on the door. "We'll take care of it." No sooner did he turn away than the sounds of commotion outside sparked anew. Shouts, demands, sirens echoed in a frenzy. I felt the knot of fear tighten in my chest. "Mom, what is happening?" Jake whispered, his voice quaking. "I don't know," I said, squeezing his shoulder, "but I won't let anyone hurt you," my voice softer now, a promise against the bone-deep dread. In those tense moments, we were shielded by the chaos outside but exposed to our own fears. Would this ever come to an end? I glanced at Jake, seeing the boy who deserved a normal life, free from shadows and threats. I had to believe there was hope. Minutes felt like hours until finally, the door swung open, the officer reappearing. We apprehended the man. He's not a threat anymore. Sweet relief washed over me, but it barely tempered the fear lurking beneath the surface, bubbling dangerously. "Our son," I started, trembling, "he has something to tell." The officer nodded, understanding the weight behind my words. He signaled for us to follow him, and instinctively, I took Jake's hand, anchoring us both amidst the uncertainty of our surroundings. "Tell me everything," I urged softly, looking at Jake. I don't know what he wanted," Jake started, his brown eyes brimming with confusion. "He just said I was special." That he had something to show me. In that instant, I realized that the encounter had shifted. Whatever this man knew, it was far beyond our understanding. A knot twisted in my stomach. "Jake," I barely breathed, "that makes you a target. But we'll figure this out, okay? You're not alone in this." As we stepped into the hall, I felt emboldened by possibility. Together we could confront the unknown. The officers surrounded us, but it felt more like a family than a threat. The storm had passed, but the shadows still loomed, waiting for the next chance to strike. With resolve ignited in my chest, I looked at Jake and whispered, "We'll uncover this together." The path ahead was murky and uncertain, but I wouldn't let fear dim the light ahead. And whatever shadows awaited us, we would face them side by side. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel.